The Pippen Dodds Marquette Video Podcast combining John Dodds, my friend and colleague and publisher of MarquetteHoops.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, a subsidiary of CBS Sports. I'm Tom Pippins. We're at Wisconsin Sports Stream, all made possible by our marvelous producer, Jason Ruck. This is Joe Declan Moran, who wrote a marvelous book called You Can Call Me Al. We've been reminiscing all kinds of stories. And you know what? When it comes to you and John and Al McGuire, I mean, we're going to just toss out the script and just roll, because one story after the other. So you wanted to get into one right away.
When Bo Ellis was designing the team uniforms before the Final Four season, Al was kind of skeptical. He said, "Okay, Bo, go ahead, knock yourself out, see what you want to do." When he brought the designs into Al, Al was impressed, and he said, "Looks good, Bo. Let me take it to the shop." What he meant, medalist.
Yeah.
And we'll see what they can do, and they'll get back to you and let you know what it is, which way you want to go with how the uniform should look. In the meantime, one of Al's former players, John Stone, who his wife Jackie had a boutique in suburban Milwaukee, and she was very, very good with design. And so Al had gone and brought Bo's design papers to Jackie, and John wasn't home at the time. He was not there, but Al took it upon himself to go to the Stone home on his motorcycle, and he goes in, and John arrives maybe about a half an hour to an hour later, and he sees this motorcycle in his driveway. Who's here? So he goes in, and there's Jackie and Al going over all of these drawings for Bo Ellis's uniform design. And he said one of the things that, and I don't know exactly how much Jackie did in terms of making suggestions or whatever, because Al had also contacted Julie Campbell, who was Sports Illustrated swimsuit editor, back in the day, and she had gone over and looked at the things, and she made some suggestions. And when Al was with Jackie, she said, Jackie, would you very much mind if Bo gets credit for the uniforms? And she said, not at all. And that was another thing where Al just would show up, and it would be the least expected thing. Mm-hmm. That was typical of Al.
Yeah, I remember we were staying at a hotel in Chandler, Arizona, covering the Brewers in spring training years, and all of a sudden, who walks up but Al McGuire? And he just held court for, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, and it was mesmerizing, just incredible. But John, I know that as you're talking with Joe Moran here, You Can Call Me Al, this marvelous book on Al McGuire, memories are being stirred. How did you first meet Coach?
I knew of him because my dad played for Marquette in the right after World War II, and he hurt his knee his freshman year, so he transferred in from Drake. He grew up in Iowa, and I said, "Dad, they took away your scholarship?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Boy, that probably cost you $60 per semester or something. How did you ever overcome that?" But he stayed in Milwaukee. He liked Marquette and liked Milwaukee, so he stayed here. And he later became a basketball coach. So he was invited to be a coach at medalist Al McGuire's camp over at St. John's Military Academy. And so he said, "Hey, can my son come?" I think I was 11 maybe. So I said, "Sure." So I was a camper, and I'm kind of, Dad parked it in the shade. We were signing a registration, and I was just kind of leaning up against the car. And all of a sudden this guy comes over and goes, "Hey kid, you're kind of tall for your age." And I look up, and it's Al McGuire. I'm like, where did I didn't see him coming. It was right there. And so we're talking. I'm like, this is the man. And so then we went into and this is the one day he came. There's one day a week he came to his camp. Majerus ran it with Hank Raymond primarily. So we go into the gym, And you talk about a life lesson for an 11-year-old. I learned something that I carry with me today. And Al starts talking to the 75 campers, and then he takes two of the, he goes, Allie McGuire and Jerry Holman came in. He said, here are the two of the greatest shooters in college basketball today, maybe in the world. These guys can shoot better than anybody. Here, let me show you. And he calls two counselors. One I got to know later because I recognized him. I went to law school with him, and I went up to him and I said, hey, you were the guy, and it was Mike Sanger, who practices on the south side of Milwaukee to this day. His dad was a big Marquette booster, Don Sanger. And Mike Sanger and this guy from, this kid from Neenah were competing with Allie and Jerry, and they're shooting jumpers from the top of the key on either side. And it was the first one to 20 wins. And Al was going to say, this proves how good these two guys are. Well, Allie and Jerry couldn't find the range. and Mike Sanger and his teammate get the ball and go, and they get 20 out of 25, and they beat, and Allie had like 18. So Allie goes, that was unbelievable. That will never, ever happen again. Let's do it again. So Al blows the whistle, and the two shoot. This time, Mike Sanger and the guy from Nicolay, it took him 23 shots to make 20, and Allie was like 17. And so Al's like, that is absolutely incredible. It's so incredible that what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, if this happens again, I'm going to take every one of you campers, all 75 of you, on my next trip to New Zealand.
Oh my God.
I'm going to get my secretary in my office to print out permission slips. You can take them to your parents, and because it's a long trip to New Zealand.
Is it ever?
And we're gonna make sure that they all know about it. You'll be gone for at least 10 days, and we're for 11-year-olds and our heads are ready to explode. So they try it one last time, and this time Allie and Jerry can't hit anything. And Mike and the other guy from Neenah shoot, and they hit 20 out of 21. And Allie's got 10, and they're bouncing it off the back of the rim, the front of the rim. So Al goes up, and he says to Allie, he just starts swearing at him, and tells Jerry, you chokers, you guys are a bunch of, and you can just tell they're kind of looking down or whatever. So and we're just jumping. Every 75 kids, he goes, this is unbelievable. And he said, I'm going to take all you guys, we'll get the permission slips, and we'll probably leave, and they gave the month. And he said that summer and winter are switched down in New Zealand because they're in the southern hemisphere, and to us there. And he goes, wait a second, give me that ball. He gets the ball, he goes to the free throw line, he goes, okay, double or nothing. If I make this shot, I don't have to take you guys. He makes it, and there's silence. And it was the first time in my life I'd ever been conned by an adult.
Yeah.
Where I couldn't take an adult seriously. And it's, 50 years later, and I still remember it like it was yesterday, and I've never looked at adults the same since. When somebody was telling me something, usually it was my dad or my uncle or something, I would agree with it. But, so that was my life lesson, my first life lesson from Al McGuire. And I still see, Mike Sanger. And Mike was, when I saw him in law school, I said, say, weren't you the guy that beat Allie McGuire? And he's looking at me like, how the heck did you know that or whatever? And I said it was just one of those classic Al McGuire comments, stories.
And a classic John Dodds experience, right? Yeah. So, Joe Moran, again, you can call me. This isn't the only book you've written, though. Talk to us a little bit about
the other book
that came
is
out in 03, was it?
This is Going Uptown.
Yeah.
When Marquette went to the 2003 Final Four with Tom Crean
a little bit.
and the man.
There's you can call me.
Dwayne Wade,
Yep.
Yeah.
one of the terrific basketball players in the history of Marquette, and he really brought a great notice to Marquette with that Final Four, and that really did wonders for fundraising for the McGuire Center when they were wanting to build it. So. And what a Final Four that was. And of course, John will always remember the game against Kentucky when he had the triple-double. In fact, when we were down in New Orleans, Tom interviewed me for your station about the book and talking about the importance of what Marquette's Final Four with Al McGuire, what that did for his legacy, and the Final Four in 2003, how that validated Tom Crean's legacy as well. And that was, and you probably remember this yourself, Tom, I think there were more Marquette people down in New Orleans that weekend than any of the other teams. And it was just magical.
It was special. Yeah, magical's a great word. If I may,
Be my guest.
just to interject, talk about Tom Crean and Al McGuire. Crean absolutely revered Al, didn't he? And he came to really love him like a father.
You know, they had a relationship. Al always felt that Tom Crean was going to do it at Marquette, that he had the work ethic, he had the attitude, he had the great charisma with young recruits that Al had in his own way. And nobody outworked a coach or another school for recruits than Tom Crean. He was, in fact, not long after he came to Milwaukee, Tom bought one of those transponders so that he could make his way in the state of Illinois during his recruiting processes. And Al was just very, very impressed with everything about the way that Tom Crean carried himself, the way he spoke, and how he dealt with alums and students. It was very, very impressive to Al how he really wanted to connect with the students and the student body. And John and I have talked about this, how Tom Crean really did 2 rebuilds at Marquette in his time coaching in Milwaukee. And Tom Crean was very, very, he went on I think they took a day together, but it was Al who contacted Tom. And usually it's the other way around. You know, usually it's Muhammad going to the mountain, but this time it was turned around. And they spent a day together, you know, going to some of Al's greasy spoons, checking out some of the garage sales and antique shows. And it was a real lesson in how to just stop and smell the roses for Tom Crean. And Al just always reminded him, just, do what you're doing and you're going to be great.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, there was you talk about Al McGuire and Tom Crean. I interviewed Al, and he was extremely nice to me. He gave me over an hour of his time. And so I said, and George Thompson, Maurice Lucas, all of them had stories where Al never does anything unless there's some objective. And he checked me out just like he checked you out before the interview. And he wanted to talk estate planning because unfortunately he had that blood disorder and he was coming to the end, and he wanted to, 1999, and I said, well, Coach, can I take you out to dinner? He goes, take me out to breakfast and talk about estate planning. I said, be happy to. So we're talking about that, and he's talking about, he said, I've met some of the most famous people in the world through my coaching, and I've done speeches on all the continents. And he said, you know who I'm meeting next week? I said, no. He said, Tom Cruise. I said, Tom Cruise? Really? And he said, yeah. He said, Tom Cruise, do you know him?
I know where this is going. This is good. This is a good one.
So I said, Tom Cruise. He said, do you know him? And I said, well, yeah. He was in Top Gun. He was in, you'd probably, he was in The Color of Money. He was in A Few Good Men. And I said, you'd probably like him in this Irish saga where he and his wife, who's an actress also, were in Far and Away, but the Irish people coming, and you might really enjoy that. He goes, oh, really? He writes that down, Far and Away. And I said, yeah. And I said, he's got a really pretty wife. He's got 2 kids. They're both adopted. He goes, oh, they're adopted. I know he had 2 kids. I didn't know they were adopted. And he writes that down. And I thought, and a little voice is saying, geez, John, you know an awful lot about Tom Cruise. What else do you know about Tom Cruise? And I said, well, and so I said a little bit more, and then I said, well, where are you meeting him? He says, well, he's really busy. He's flying into Mitchell Field probably, and I'm going to go to Mitchell Field. And I watched Al come out of his car to go to this Einstein Bagels where we're having breakfast. And it took him about 3 minutes to walk about 50 yards. He was really slowing down. I said, Coach, I'd love to meet Tom Cruise. How about if I pick you up and drop you off at the airport, right, where you're going to meet him? He goes, hey, that's a great idea. And he writes that down too. And he said, I said, what, are you going to do a business deal with him? He goes, yeah, I'm going to talk about some business deals. So, wow, he goes, and I'm going to give him a piece of advice. Do you want to know what I'm going to give him? Tell him? And I'm like, I'm kind of looking around, hoping nobody else is listening to this. And he goes, be real patient this year because your point guard, Cornell Henry, can't always shoot the outside shot. And I looked at him. I'm saying he's talking about Tom Crean.
Yeah.
He's not talking about Tom Cruise.
Cornell Henry and not Cordell.
It's not Cornell Henry. And I thought, but Crean had 2 kids. Tom Cruise had 2 kids. So we're doing. I didn't know she was an actress. I didn't know she was an actress or whatever.
Jody.
And so I've never had a conversation in my life where I'm talking for literally 10 minutes where we're talking like
Classic.
this.
Yeah. Hey, you two guys have maybe a couple more segments in you. We'll
Sure.
just continue to talk about Al McGuire, Marquette. You can call me Al. The colorful journey of college basketball's original flower child from one of the really greats. You know, we love Joe Moran, and we're going to continue right here at WSS Studios with our producer Jason Ruck, John Dodds, Joe Moran, Tom Pippins, coming up with more.